Hey, this is Enaa in with you in the Fight Back. And I had a request to talk more about the Frankfurt School and Antonio Gramsci. And although I have read sporadically in the Frankfurt School, I have read a great deal of Antonio Gramsci, and I'm a great admirer of him. Which, if you didn't know, he's one of the giants of Marxist thought and a great Marxist activist. And I'd like to just talk about his idea of common sense. And I want to do this by way of a personal story. I used to be an assistant manager. I was also a cashier at a place that will remain nameless. And I did this work for about 7 years, and I met a great variety of people, and they had varying attitudes, whether it was my fellow employees or the customers I had to deal with. And they touched on many aspects of, when we talked, on many aspects of daily life and whatnot. And at one point we touched on the current immigration debate, and it told me a great deal about how hegemony works in the United States. And for Gramsci, the idea of common sense is that it is a conception which, even in the brain of one individual, is fragmentary, incoherent, and inconsequential in conformity with the social and cultural position of those masses whose philosophy it is. This means that a person can hold contradictory ideas, for instance, a belief in racial equality and a hatred of immigrants on the one hand. I observed many examples of this type of common sense during my work. I want to take the example of John, a fellow employee of mine, and he came from overseas, and he was friendly and always helpful when problems arose. And he had told me once that it took him quite a deal of time to get used to life in the U.S. And he once told me he had to have time when I was training someone in a job who came from his home country and didn't speak English quite well. And I was patient. And I really thought he was quite a tolerant person. But it wasn't until I discussed with John, and I should add, this is not his real name, my future plans to become a teacher, and this was about 6 or 7 years ago, that I discovered the contradictory beliefs he held. John told me not to become a teacher in his hometown, which was a rather poor immigrant Latino area, because he said Latinos had invaded and destroyed that area. And they told me they were more interested in welfare and drugs than getting ahead in the U.S. And I actually challenged him with John on this about globalization, colonialism, and other such ideas. And I tried to explain to him that Latin America suffers from, a racist immigration policy that the United States engages in. I also explained the racial division in the United States that prevents Latinos from advancing. And I explained that assimilation for Latinos often means shedding their American dream and drawing the lowest rungs in a caste-like society. None of this really made a difference, and we argued for a few more minutes, but I pretty much saw I wasn't going to convince him, so I kind of walked off. Yet in the conversation with John, I learned that the source of some of his ideas, and I could piece together where at least some of his common sense was coming from. And he told me it was in the newspaper, and I read about some crimes perpetrated by some Dominicans. He also saw something on television, and he said something about talk radio. And this, coupled with probably what I would say is a limited personal experience, allowed for John to form his view of immigrants and a certain ability to advance in society existed with his group in his mind, but not with others, namely Dominicans, and based on that fragmentary information he picked up. And these myths embodied in John seem to me a classic example of hegemony exercised by dominant groups in society. These myths are part of that exercise of hegemony that affects ordinary workers like John. And Gramsci says, this consent is historically caused by the prestige and consequent confidence which the dominant group enjoys because of its position and function in the world of production. What Gramsci's getting at here is that ideas propagated by the dominant group, the ruling class, are mixed with the already present ideas of John. John accepts the view of the dominant group. After all, it's only natural to do. They're on top. And thus produces a certain view of immigrants in the United States. The myths that John believed are not propagated by necessarily bad people. It's not necessarily a conspiracy. Nor did John believe him because he was a horrible, horrible person. No, the myths of immigration serve a certain social function. Hegemony is created by powers that be through their prestige and the media. The ideas of the dominant class mixed with John's already held views to create a negative appraisal of immigrants. And this helps to serve and solidify the rule of the dominant class and helps to prevent the emergence of critical consciousness. And anyway, that's just kind of an idea of common sense. And at another time, I'll hope to go into hegemony with you in greater detail. Anyway, this is Enaa. Until next time.